Well, I just got done seeing Dune 2. Should be noted that I haven't read the books and I've never even seen the old Kyle MacLachlan Sting movie thing, TV show. I'm not even sure what it is, to be honest, because I've never seen it. I've always heard Dune was kind of, like a tough nut to crack, like a big deal to jump into. And it always seemed very dense to me. So I kind of avoided it. And then I saw the most recent movie and I thought it did a pretty good job. Like Dune Part One did a pretty good job of making me feel connected to characters and lore and world. And I thought I had a pretty good understanding of it. And I never really felt like that lost. And I really enjoyed like the slower burn progression, them explaining things and taking their time with characters. So I was very excited to go see Dune 2. And so I watched Dune 1 again last night in preparation. I may have said that already. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. And the first couple minutes of Dune 2 is Florence Pugh doing a recap of the events of Dune 1, talking about how her father, the Emperor, pretty much led to the fall of the House of Atreides and used the Harkonnens to do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess if I had just gone into the movie, I probably would have been fine. So you don't have to rewatch the first one. There's a lot that there's not a lot that you have to worry about translating over. It's essentially like a fresh start. Overall, I did enjoy the movie. So it's shot very well. The acting itself is pretty good for most of them. Zendaya, Chani doesn't get a lot to do, and she doesn't really get to express like a lot of emotional range. I'm not sure if that's just how her character was written or if it's just, they're like, all right, we get the point. Let's go on to the next scene. She just kind of feels like everybody else are like giants and, she's like trying her best. So just didn't quite land as much for me. But like I said, that could be a problem with the writing because I felt like Chani just like really her relationship with Paul doesn't get a lot to do in the movie. Like he's kind of like a focal point for her affection, but she never really, I don't know, it just doesn't quite feel like they earn it as much as I was hoping they would. Like when they go from like being kind of like flirtatious to like, fighting with each other on the battlefield to then sleeping with each other, or at least the implication is they're sleeping with each other. It doesn't feel like any progression is made with them beyond those, like the initial setup and like, now they're a couple, now we've established it, now let's move on. It doesn't show like a lot of like them earning it. And I'm not particularly invested in their relationship. And we know that, Paul's got greater ambitions than, here on the planet. And like, especially, near the end, it's quite obvious what he's going to do. I'll save spoilers for another conversation, but there's a point at the end, and those of you who've seen it, you know what I'm talking about, where it's like, well, this could have been played for a lot more of an emotional beat, but it just fell flat. It felt melodramatic, soap opera-ish. And I feel that's because we didn't get to establish truly the stakes between Paul and Chani. And I feel another character who kind of suffers from this lack of development was it Fade Rotha? I'm probably pronouncing all these things wrong. I know they said it a million times in the movie, but I'm just not, I don't know. It's not my thing. Just don't know it that well. So Fade Rotha, played by Austin Butler, he was pretty good. I love Elvis. And they establish him as kind of like this, oh, he's a psychopath. Well, they keep telling us he's a psychopath. We see him do like kind of like crazy stuff in a fight. They establish that he's very easily manipulated and that he will be a good replacement for Paul. And so that puts him on the path to Arrakis to, root out the Freeman and find this Muad'Dib who has been running roughshod over the Harkonnen spice export. And I was like, oh, cool. We're really going to spend some time with the villain. I did not count how many minutes he's on screen, but I'd be surprised if it was more than like 10. He gets like that opening sequence, which is nice for like establishing some of it, but like most of his character work is done when the Bene Gesserit are talking about him. So like even like his big like character thing is done in exposition. And then, he has his fateful showdown with Paul at the end, which isn't a spoiler. It's in the trailer. And I just didn't feel anything about it. Like, I'm like, okay, well, I don't really feel any tension between the two of them fighting because again, it's like this guy's just propped up to be the bad guy for this movie. And it was a little flat for me. I just wish there had been more focus on his character and on his development. And like, I wish I felt stakes when they were fighting, but I just didn't. The whole end of the movie kind of falls flat because I think they spent too much time doing like the story beat of like, here comes Paul being the Lisan Al Gaib or whatever, the chosen one. And they show us like almost in painful detail every step of his journey. It's repetitive at that point, and I don't need them to keep doing that. It would have been nice to spend more time with characters, like them talking to each other or them having quiet moments together. The ending feels very rushed, and this is a 3 hour movie almost, 2 hours 45, whatever it is. So I had kind of a hard time with like how dense it was and how repetitive a lot of it felt. So I wanted to like it a lot more than I did, and I still like it. It's just not nearly as good as the first one, because the first one made me feel like I understood Dune pretty well. This one, I was like, oh God, why is this? I understood most of what was happening, but it gave me enough time, like to be like, wait a minute, did that make sense? Wait a minute, does any of this make sense? And like, I don't feel like you should have time in a movie to like sit back and reflect on like, wait a minute. What does this make sense? Why are we doing this? I really wish they had focused more on character stuff. It is visually a beautiful movie, and I can understand that. And they want to show off how impressive they are as filmmakers, but it does feel they're a little high on their own supply. I mean, a lot of the stuff that's like impressive is in the trailer. So I'm like, this looks really nice. I can't wait to see how it's fleshed out. And for my money, I don't think the characters are as well developed as they are in the first movie. Stilgar is an interesting character because they established him as like a religious man who believes in the signs of the prophecy. And the way that the movie is put together, it's almost like he disappears like near the end of the movie. Like he's not as counsel well kept as he was as I was expecting. I expected him to have a much larger role, and it just never quite got to that point where I felt like the connection between Paul and all these other characters. I still like the movie. I still recommend it, but I could not help but feel much more disconnected from this one. And I think a lot of it is the pacing. I think it's the lack of characters truly bonding and getting to know each other, because instead of them, like, it's just like, here are scenes, this is what's happening. Here are scenes, here's some conversation. And the beginning of the movie does a much better job of like, here's a scene, here's a conversation about what happened. But then they kind of lose their way on that. And by the end of the movie, I think it was rushed. I think it was choppy. I think it gets choppy in the middle of the film. And I never think it quite recovers from that pacing issue that, I don't know. I like it. Make up your own mind, but I will try and find like some of my friends who probably know a little more about Dune, and maybe we'll do like more of a spoiler talk about how it compares. I should probably read the book now. So sorry for rambling about it, but I like the movie. It's just choppy. I don't think there's enough character development. And so I was a little bummed. I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 overall. It's not really quite what I expected. So, I mean, that could be my fault as well, but I do think it was choppy, and I do think characterizations fell flat. I don't think it's as good as the first one. And especially if you watch them both back to back, I think the second one's a little ponderous and a little high on its own supply. High on its own spice, one could say. All right. That was terrible. I'm sorry. All right. I'm going. Bye.